So if you're not starting in the 9th grade, for those families who are listening who have upcoming freshmen, they really need to be putting their students in a position to be able to qualify for the funding to go to school.
Right.
For the students who are seniors, at this point, they've done what they've done academically. They've done a lot of community service. But today, they need to start going back in their mind, and if they hadn't listed those things out, list out everything they've done. Hopefully, they've taken some advanced placement classes, some honor classes, because it's going to take all of that when they're applying for these scholarships, because you have so many students who are chasing the same dollar.
What I know for sure is the Department of Education is a mess right now. There's so much going on. College costs are going up, and students still want to go to school. And I know you all desperately need some help. And I am certainly happy to be able to provide that help to you. So welcome. Welcome to another episode of the Thank Me Later Show with me, your host, Jini Thornton. And clearly, you know what we're talking about today. We are talking about all things financial aid and really focused on you rising seniors. So obviously any parents, I don't care if you've got kids in middle school, you could benefit from this conversation. But if you have a child who's like in the 10th or 11th grade, you need to lock in. You need to absolutely share this conversation because we have a subject matter expert in the building today. Miss Lenora Jackson is here with us.
Thank you.
And listen, Lenora, you are a financial aid expert and former director of financial aid at Spelman. You were at Spelman for 28 years.
Yes.
Is that not crazy?
That is crazy. That is crazy to stay on a job that long.
I know it. All the students' lives that you helped to transform, they're countless, I'm sure.
Yes.
So I need to brag a little bit about your background because I want people to understand that people who are listening to us and watching us would never get access to somebody like you. So when we think about your level of experience and expertise, you can't just pick up the phone and Lenora Jackson with your wealth of knowledge is available. So let me tell the folks who you are. So first of all, retired. Let me high five you for being retired.
Absolutely.
Okay. I want you to know I'm a little jealous.
Don't be jealous. My mother said, keep working, your day is coming.
My day is coming. That's the second time you said that. I'm holding on to that. But you have more than 40 years in higher education. We talked about being the director of financial aid at Spelman for 28 marvelous years, but you've also served in other roles. So I think it's really important to mention that you have been an auditor. I didn't know that about you.
Yes.
Of other financial aid offices at Benedict College, Paul Quinn College, Jackson State University, Edwin Waters College. So you have seen it all, helping kids get the money, letting folks know when they cannot afford to go to school. And one thing that I really appreciate about you, how you stayed connected, leaning in and guiding families even after your retirement at Spelman, and that you believe that it's never too early to start the process. Do not give up, but start early as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, if you don't start early,
right,
and you're waiting,
right,
you're too late.
Right.
Or I'll say you're behind the 8 ball.
You're behind. So what is early? Because, what I've learned culturally, I see parents locking in like senior year. Like parents, everyone is like, oh my God, it's graduation time, and I'm thinking to myself, y'all are late to the party.
Yes.
When should families really begin the financial aid process or educating themselves?
Let me just say this. If I were talking to parents today, like we are, I would say it's not too early in elementary and middle school.
Oh my gosh.
I have been doing my research, and what I have found, there are some scholarships out there that students can apply for as early as middle school.
Oh my gosh.
And so you just have to go out and Google,
right,
what can I apply for? And there are some tips to know what's legit and what's not legit. And you do need to look for those. Any scholarship that asks you to pay money, you don't apply for it.
Sure.
Anything that says you're going to get money and there's no application, you don't do it. But if you have a senior or a rising senior, I will say, they have to start immediately. Over the summer. When they finish that junior year,
Right.
they should start. The key is really, have you prepared your student when they started high school
Absolutely.
with taking the classes they need to take, the more advanced classes, making sure you keep a list of all their activities that they've done, because when it comes to the scholarship process, there are all types of scholarships out there, and you don't want to be in your junior year trying to remember everything your son or daughter has done to prepare to apply for scholarships.
And I just really kind of need to look in the camera when I say this. It is imperative, families, that when your child enters the 9th grade, you need to be getting the lay of the land of what it takes to apply to college and what it takes to apply for what scholarships. Because like you were saying, Lenora, you need those 4 years to build your child's profile.
Absolutely.
How do you know how many community service hours a particular scholarship is? You wait to the 11th or 12th grade, you don't have time to get them.
Late.
So you're absolutely too late. So I know it's different than what we've been taught. It's even different from when we were in school.
Yes.
But this is what it's going to require right now, particularly with all the chaos that we're having. So speaking of all this chaos, I'm like, what is, I don't even know how schools are functioning right now. With every day, something different is happening. What are you kind of getting a sense of from the financial aid office's perspective?
So I'm going to tell you, with the climate in which we live today, schools are really struggling. Especially in the science area, where our head of our country is saying that NIH no longer can give money to schools, and unless they do it his way, they're cutting off funding. So what I will say for undergrad, it may not be as difficult, but it's going to be difficult as students look forward to what they're going to do past undergrad, especially in the sciences. How are you going to get funding for graduate school PhD programs? That's going to be more difficult. But even in the undergraduate level, you have programs that are totally grant-based programs, and funding has been cut off. So I do know some schools who run such programs for their science major students. Those funds are cut off. So institutions have now got to start looking at, how do we raise money to keep these students coming to our institution and be able to fund them? And that's going to be the difficult part for many families. And I will say this, Jini, as we are looking to the future, after COVID, there were more students flocking to HBCUs, and they're flocking to HBCUs more than they had in the past, because they felt like they could get more money at PWIs.
Right.
Now that students are flocking to our HBCUs, the issue is the number of students applying and the number of students who are going to be accepted.
No question.
So if you're not starting in the 9th grade, for those families who are listening who have upcoming freshmen, they really need to be putting their students in a position to be able to qualify for the funding to go to school.
Right.
For the students who are seniors, at this point, they've done what they've done academically. They've done a lot of community service. But today, they need to start going back in their mind, and if they hadn't listed those things out, list out everything they've done. Hopefully, they've taken some advanced placement classes, some honor classes, because it's going to take all of that when they're applying for these scholarships, because you have so many students who are chasing the same dollar.
We're chasing the same dollar. So let's kind of back up and really focus on the financial aid process. Because I know for me, I kind of think about the money in different buckets. So certainly we have scholarships. So students can get scholarship money from the school that they plan to attend, and then they could get it from other organizations, corporations, sororities and fraternities, church. You can apply from scholarships from a lot of different places.
Absolutely.
But now when we think about applying for financial aid, is it true that the process really starts with the FAFSA? Is that like kind of like step number one?
Let me just say this. Every single student should do a FAFSA. Okay. Whether you think your student is not need-based or they are need-based. Okay. Because need is very different for every school.
I want you to define what FAFSA is, because I don't even want to assume that people know. What is that?
Okay. It is what the acronym stands for.
Yes.
Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So when you see FAFSA, it's Free Application Federal Student Aid. Every school, college in the United States, every student where they're going to apply should apply for the FAFSA. Yes. And it is a once-a-year process. So just because you do it in your freshman year,
you got to do it again.
You got to do it again for your sophomore year, your junior year, and your senior year. Mm-hmm. And the process begins in the fall of a student's senior year. Right. So the school that your student is thinking about applying, that financial aid office is going to look at that FAFSA. The federal government processes it. Right. And then what's come back is called a student aid index. That has changed from what it used to be. Right. So that number will let the financial aid office know what is the student eligible to receive.
What is their need? And so the FAFSA comes out, is it back to October 1st when it opens? Because I know the last couple of years it's been a little tricky.
It's been a little tricky because the federal government decided to change the form. And so this year, it's supposed to be October 1. Okay. So start looking for it October 1. Right. It will definitely be out before the end of the year.
For sure.
But what a student and their family should always do is the very first day that FAFSA opens, do it that day so that their school will get that information early.
Okay. I'm going to interrupt you right there. Lenora said, do it the day that the application opens. The day. So that means you need to be prepared for it. Not like, oh my God, I can't believe it's time. We're hoping, it's been confusing. And shame on the federal government, the Department of Ed, whoever, for the date fluctuating. No, people can't manage that.
They can't.
Particularly people who are brand new to the process. You need to be able to lock in and know. So we're hoping, fingers crossed, that the forms will be available October 1st. You need to lock in and get them done. So for families, like what in September could they be doing to start kind of getting ready? Because it's like, I'm going to sit down, but is there a way for me to kind of familiarize myself with the form so I can knock it out?
Yes. So one of the things I always suggest, parents, do not do the form for your child. Sit down with your child. And the reason I say that,
I appreciate that.
When it says put in the Social Security number,
right?
If the parent is doing it, they sometimes tend to not think about, they're asking for my child's Social Security number. They will key their Social Security number.
Well, Lenora, again, forgive me for interrupting you. At first, when you said that, I was like, it can't be real. Why did one of my closest friends do that? Literally put in her Social Security number for her child's financial aid, had to start the process all over again. And I'm thinking to myself, Lenora's been talking about this.
Yes.
Like it is a real problem. Please listen to what Lenora is saying. You all need to collectively as a family sit down, carve out the time. I also think it's a great way for your student to understand what it takes to make all of this happen.
When your child goes off to school, the school is going to treat them as an independent student.
Right.
Parents cannot just call and get information about their child's financial aid. So the main thing is for parents and students to do this as a family, but let your student be the driver at the computer, putting in the information. The other thing is, because FAFSA uses income tax 2 years prior to the year that your child is going to school, there are families that don't file their taxes first on time.
Sure.
Or don't file.
Right.
Well, understand when your child gets ready to do the FAFSA, if you don't have a tax return completed, your child's not going to get any money.
Well, let me also say something else. I got to put my hand on my hip for this one, Lenora. You talked about before, when I've interviewed you in the past, you just talked about how common it is for families to be filing their tax returns incorrectly and how it impacts the financial aid process. And what you meant by that is, people are filing head of household when they really should be filing married filing joint or married filing separate. Now it's time to complete the FAFSA. And guess what? You're in trouble.
Yep.
I know 2 families who had to go back
Yes.
and refile their tax returns because of now completing the FAFSA because they had done it wrong. Like, that's a real thing.
It is a real thing, Jini. And let me just say this. If you are married, if you're going to file separately, you have to check married filing separate. One spouse cannot file head of household.
You cannot.
It is not legal with the IRS.
I am a CPA, and people do it all the time, and it is not right. If you are married, you should be married filing joint or married filing separately.
Absolutely.
Folk wanting bigger refunds. Now they're filing head of household.
Exactly.
And the other person's filing single. Now you're coming together to complete this FAFSA, and guess what? Now the tax returns, it all doesn't line up. Now you're starting over and you're delaying the process.
And not only that, Jini, I think they should realize if they have to refile that tax return, if they got a tax return refund incorrectly, they're going to have to pay that money back.
Yes.
So it's better to do it right on the front end.
Please.
And also, I would really caution the people who are married and they're one of the child is not the married couple. Mm-hmm. So you have a step parent in the household.
Right.
Well, a lot of times, we'll say it's the mom who's the mother of the child. And she says, well, he's not really paying for the child. Federal government says his income counts.
Yeah. If you filed it, he's in the household.
He's in the household.
They're counting the household. They're not
household income.
They're not asking who's paying the bill.
Right.
No.
Exactly. So you have to count whether it's a stepmom, a stepdad, whoever's in that household, the income that comes in that household has to go on that FAFSA. Even if you filed it separately, married filing separate, you then have to add both those tax returns together and put them on the FAFSA. And that's it helps if they know in their freshman year what's coming so that you can get it right.
Right. And Lenora, I just want to pause for a minute because I want to make sure that the parents of our graduating seniors, this is next year. Your child is a junior, a rising senior. While your child is still in high school, during the fall semester, October, you got to start applying for financial aid. Guess what that means? You may not even know where your child is going to school
Absolutely.
yet. They have not been accepted anywhere.
Absolutely.
At this point, but you still have to do it. And I see parents waiting because they're like, well, I don't know where they're going to go to school. Honey, you better put down 10 schools or whatever it is and get that done because they're waiting. Meanwhile, they don't understand the cost of what waiting means.
And I would say, Jini, if we're talking about a rising senior right now, the conversation should be this summer.
Right now.
Where are we going to apply?
Absolutely.
So at least when you're doing that FAFSA in October, and parents have to realize applications for college usually opens in August or September.
Right.
So your students should be applying to schools that early before they do a FAFSA. But if they have not, October 1, that FAFSA's got to be done. And you should have some idea where they're going to apply.
Right.
So you can add those schools on the FAFSA form.
And we're really talking about this right now because families, parents, I don't know, godparents, aunties, whoever you are, we have to change our mindset about what the timeline and what the schedule really is. So you have to be ready October 1st. When my children were in college, well, first of all, I want to say, thank God, I've already put 2 kids through college. Thank you, Lord. I know your grandchildren are all done now, aren't they?
Yes. Well, not all of them, but I do have a granddaughter finishing med school.
Oh, nice. So she's at Meharry,
she's
right?
At Meharry.
Oh, my gosh.
And I have another granddaughter finishing Spelman next week.
Oh, I love that.
So I'm very, very excited.
You should be excited.
And needless to say, both of them have undergraduate degrees, not paying a dime.
Come on now. That's what I'm talking about. But for my 2 kids, when they were in high school, this senior year, I'm like, all college applications had to be done before Thanksgiving. I'm like, I'm not dealing with this over Christmas and January and all that other stuff. I was done. Yes. So when going into the holidays, I was footloose and fancy free.
That's right.
Now, I'm not going to say that it was easy, but I'm like, this is the commitment. So that way, everything related to the FAFSA, we were done. Applications done. Y'all have to have a real calendar, and these kids can't be out here all loosey-goosey. No. Lock in and hit these deadlines because it's going to make a world of difference.
And when you talk about deadlines, when you talk about applying for scholarships, they should be looking at what are those deadlines. Because if they miss a deadline, when that organization receives that application after the deadline,
right,
it's going in the trash.
Oh, definitely in the trash. That's the process of elimination.
Yes.
You all didn't meet the criteria. Because, Lenora, we're both parents, and you also now with these young adult grandchildren. I know parents and students, they want to take the summer off, and it's just we're going to all have fun. And you can have fun, but you really need to be very intentional about having your whole college financial aid system built out this summer, because you have to start executing as soon as school restarts.
Absolutely.
And parents are taking weeks to kind of get their footing, or a whole semester.
A whole semester.
You can't do that, particularly in this climate where there's going to be less money to divvy up.
Absolutely. And we know for most students, they're not even out of school yet. So we should be having those conversations. So having the summer off, I don't know, when I was growing up, you really didn't have the summers off. But you can have a plan.
Yes.
Set a calendar. What we're going to do each day. How much are we going to get done each day? So students can be accepted to college, early decision in December, where they're going to go, if they start the process early.
Absolutely. And it's huge that we do that. Now, one other thing that I want to introduce people to is the CSS profile. Yes. What is that?
So that's the college scholarship profile. So a lot of schools don't use that profile.
Okay.
First of all, you have to pay for that profile. So
first of all, I didn't know that.
Yes. So anything that you have to pay for, you don't do it. So what you want to do is anything free. Every school is going to do the FAFSA.
Right.
I would say stick with the FAFSA, do the FAFSA, and that way your child's always going to be looked at to receive money.
Right. And one thing that I really want to focus on based on what you're just saying, Lenora, is y'all have to be really mindful of all these scammers out here, because some people are going to say, oh, you have to pay to get the FAFSA done. No, you don't.
No.
You're going to need, no, you don't. So please make sure that you're very mindful of that you're on the correct websites and that you're following the correct process, because again, we don't want you to get in trouble spending money that you
can do for free.
Absolutely. You absolutely can do that for free. So one thing I want to make clear, because we're saying apply early, October 1st. A lot of people don't understand that money is given away on a first come, first serve, not sitting around waiting to see who has the greatest need. Can you kind of talk about that?
Let me tell you, I have worked in a financial aid for many, many, many years.
Right.
And it's first come, first serve.
Yes.
Those that get in early, we give the money away.
Say it.
And
yes.
So when October 1 comes, by November, We are setting up what we're going to do. Schools set up in a system. Those students who get in early, they start giving the money away simply because you're going to have so many students applying.
Absolutely.
Then students will say, well, not everybody's going to come. Well, that's a chance you take. And you wait, you may get $0. And, it's funny because I think people believe that school should be free.
Right.
And I believe it should be free, but you've got to do the work to make sure that you find the money.
Right.
And so first come, first serve, whoever gets their application, do not be the last one in, because you may be the last one in and there's no more dollars to give.
And my thing is this, I understand how people feel, but we don't get to make the rules.
We don't get to make the rules.
The rules are what they are. So I need people to get adjusted very quickly.
Absolutely.
And then literally execute, because there's so much at stake. And when we talk about students graduating with all of this debt and, having all of these financial problems, a lot of it really is lack of execution up front.
Absolutely.
That's part of it. I want to talk about this second piece. I'm going to go to this hotline caller first, but then I want to talk about affordability.
Okay.
Because I've always appreciated your candor when it comes to affordability.
Yes.
So from the Thank Me Later hotline, we have a call. Zena from Dallas says, "Hi, Lenora and Jini. Thank you both so much for bringing this subject to light. As a married mother of 3 kids, one of whom is a rising high school junior, my husband and I are trying to better understand what steps we can take to increase our son's chances of qualifying for need-based or merit-based aid." Well, first of all, will you explain the difference between need-based and merit-based aid?
Absolutely. So a lot of families whose income is at a certain level will believe that they may not qualify for need-based scholarships or need-based funds.
Right.
And that's because what the federal government does, they use the FAFSA and they have a formula and they come up with a number that says, this is how much you can afford to send your child to college. Now, if that amount is more than the cost of the education. So say school costs $10,000. Federal government says you can afford to pay $15,000 for their education. You have no need because you have enough money, according to the federal government, to pay for their education. So if your student aid index is larger than the cost of attendance, you have no need. But if it's less, then the difference is the need that you have for financial aid. Merit is based on grades. It could be based on grades, and it could be based on community service. So what they're saying is most times merit-based scholarships, most schools will use, what is your GPA coming out of high school?
Right.
And that's totally what a school will look at. And if you don't have the GPA, then you don't qualify for that merit-based aid. Then you're looking, because there's only 2.
Right.
There's merit or need.
Right.
And merit could be, say, a religious scholarship. It's merit based on the fact that you fall within that religious organization.
Right.
Or, like you said, for sororities and fraternities, they just look at your merit simply because you did the application.
Right.
And we're looking at students who apply.
Right. When I hear you say that, though, it sounds like you're saying families need to really have a strategy of what money are you going after? And I tell parents this all the time. In fact, a few weeks ago, I was in Florida with a group of women. And one of the women, she was so excited. Her son had been admitted to his first choice college. And then she said, well, I hope he will begin to look for money. Well, I hope he'll begin to do this because I don't want to pay. And then I looked at her and I said, why are you giving him a choice? When did this become optional?
Right.
Like, what do you mean you hope he does it? And I said, when my kids, way before high school, my husband and I were like, I'm not paying for you to go to school because there are too many options out here. Right. So what's our strategy? Are we going merit? We're not going to qualify for need, or are we going to go sports or something else? Decide which way we're going because I'm not paying for you to go and I'm not co-signing for any student loans. So we need to lock in right now. And I'm like, why are parents afraid to have the conversation? Like it's optional. we don't get those type of choices.
That's right.
And we're straddling our kids with all of this debt. Parents now have all this extra debt because they're not saying, this is how we're going to accomplish this goal together. And so what are your thoughts when you hear me say that?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I don't understand. And having worked in financial aid,
Right.
I hear a lot of parents giving students options.
Right.
And unless you are prepared to write a check for your child to go to school.
Because some people are independently wealthy.
Yeah, some people are. And they don't worry about it. They're not doing a FAFSA.
Right.
They already know they're going to pay.
They just write the check.
Right. So unless you are prepared to write that check, your child doesn't have an option.
No.
There are some things that you don't give children options to do.
I agree.
And going to college is an expensive venture, and it's getting more and more expensive.
Right.
And parents should say, no, that's not what we're doing.
Right.
This is the way we're going to do it.
One thing that I remember about you, this is several years ago, you had come to the Willie Moore Jr. show with me live, and parents were calling like crazy. Oh my God.
Yes.
Lenore, we were up there taking calls forever. So happy to get the help. And this mother and daughter called, and the daughter had been accepted to Spelman, and she was so excited, but the math was not mathing.
Absolutely.
Because she had not gotten enough money. And I don't even know what Spelman cost then. Good Lord, I definitely don't want to know what Spelman costs now. But you very lovingly but very directly said to her, you may need to find another school that you can afford.
Yes.
And I really appreciated that because although certainly, you were still working for Spelman at the time, but it was something very real that she needed to hear. And, it was even kind of jarring for me a little bit too, because you could tell there was the dream and the goal of, Atlanta and Spelman and all of that. And you were like, wait a minute. You may need to look someplace else, and your child needs to find a school that you all can afford. And then I kept thinking, well, if you can't afford a $2 million house, you don't go into the $2 million subdivision.
Absolutely.
You don't buy a $100,000 car. You just drive by them and you admire them on the lots. And you kind of keep going. So to me, it's kind of that exact same mindset.
It really is.
And I see people overcommitting. The other thing, too, that I see people do wrong is they approach it, Lenora, year by year versus saying, okay, this school is $50,000 a year. We multiply that by 4. We have a $200,000 thing we need to figure out versus people trying to tackle it semester by semester, year by year. And that's why you see a lot of kids who end up having to leave.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is very accurate. One of the things is that I really dislike is parents allowing students to make the decision about where they're going to go without the parent involvement in looking at 4 years down the road.
Absolutely.
And how are we going to pay for that?
Do the math.
Do the math. Because it's very real that students will come. They may have those first few dollars that are needed to get in the residence hall to start class.
Yes.
But when that next payment is due, they don't know where it's coming from.
Right.
And there are many students who have to leave at the end of the semester and start over somewhere else.
Absolutely.
But if this is very real. If your child starts college somewhere and you can't afford to pay off that first semester bill, they can transfer somewhere else, but they're not going to get a transcript until they have paid off that first school.
Absolutely.
So now we put our students in jeopardy of not being able to finish their education on time and being able to transfer immediately because we've allowed them to enroll in a school that we really cannot afford.
And Lenora, thank you for sharing that. And we have a relative who had a very similar situation. Child went to college, and the parent this kid had to go to this school. You know how parents are kind of living vicariously through their kids. Well, made it through the first year. Second year, child is leaving the school now, owes the school, I don't know, almost $10,000. Can't get the transcript, of course, what you're talking about. But I'm like, why were they ever there?
Absolutely.
You all, the hope is not a strategy. And we have to be more intentional to say, again, take that number, parents, multiply it by 4.
Absolutely.
And when you see that multiplied by 4, what type of commitment are you willing to make? The other thing, too, that I find interesting to me is my oldest son, Trevor, also went to North Carolina A&T, where I went undergrad. And people are always like, he went there because you went there. No. He went there because that's where he got money to go. Candidly, and I love my school. Shout out Aggie Pride. I wanted him to go to Hampton.
Okay.
Hampton
didn't give him any money.
They did not get the money. It was not enough.
Yes.
And so I said, well, guess what? Hampton off the list. He wanted to go to Howard. They didn't give us any money. Howard off the list. And so A&T came through with the merit-based money. Guess where we're going? Number 1 on the list. It was a financial decision and not an emotional decision.
Yes. And I will say this, Jini, I had a person work in my office
Yes.
who had a daughter who'd spent a lot of time on Spelman's campus. It came time to go to college. So they sat their daughter down at the kitchen table, which I always suggest is the best place to have those conversations.
Right.
She got into FAMU. Her parents said, okay. The mom says, well, I've got tuition covered because I've got a tuition waiver.
Because that means child can go to Spelman for free.
Right.
Yes.
Dad says, well, I'm willing to let you live on campus even though we live in the city.
Yes.
I'm going to pay for room and board.
Nice.
They said, okay, now tell us what FAMU has given you to go to school.
Right.
She says, well, they didn't give me anything. Parents got up from the table. They said, well, it's no brainer. You're going to Spelman. Done. No more conversation needed.
Absolutely.
It's about where can you afford. The one thing I don't think parents look at enough is how much debt are you willing to have your child in when they finish college at 22 years old.
Yes.
We as parents understand debt. We understand a mortgage. We understand a car note. Do you want to have your child in more debt than they're even making their first job out of college? And that's something that parents really need to think about.
Right. Yeah. Affordability. A couple of things before we wrap. I could talk to you all day about this topic, particularly now with all the changes that are happening in the Department of Ed, all this uncertainty. Parents really are going to have to lock in. But I know that they really need to hear from an authoritative voice like yours. So thank you for sharing your knowledge. So what are some common myths? Because, we culturally, we can believe some crazy stuff. What are some common things that people believe?
Let me just say this. What we still believe today, if your student, your child, does extremely well in school, that they're automatically going to get a scholarship to college. There was a time schools were looking for people who looked like us.
Right.
That time has long been gone. Today, there are so many students, and I don't know if people realize the kinds of GPA these students are coming out of college
Insane
with.
Today.
Insane. 4-point plus GPA. My granddaughter came to Spelman with a 4.7.
Right.
And
it's like, how is that even possible out of a 4-point scale?
Because they take AP classes,
Gotcha.
which are 5 credit hours. And so that boosts their GPA up. So it is no longer that just because your child did extremely well,
Thank you for
that
saying
they're
that.
going to automatically get a scholarship. Almost anywhere.
Right. And Lenora, when I hear you say that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I really feel that way, even more so about Black women.
Yes.
Because a 4-point Black female they're a dime a dozen to me now.
They are.
That's not even unusual anymore.
It is not.
And so when you talk about your granddaughter having a 4.7, I'm on the board of trustees at A&T, so I get to hear a lot about, the amazing students who are coming. They are all over 4.0. I think for the first time, I think I even heard about somebody having a 5.0 on a 4-point scale. That is not unusual anymore. That is not enough.
It is not enough. And we need to, I don't say stop telling your children.
Right.
Don't tell them they're going to get a free ride.
Right.
Because our goal should be that our students are doing extremely well.
For
so
sure.
they get in college.
For sure.
And I think that's one of the most common myths that we still perpetuate to families.
Absolutely. Any other myth that you're like, y'all, please stop believing that?
I know a myth that if I get in, I know they're going to help me stay in.
Right.
Well, it would be nice if colleges had that kind of money.
Right.
Because once a student is there, schools don't want to lose them. But schools don't have the resources to pay for every single student that comes. And so they need to really apply to the school. I won't say apply to the school they can afford. Go to the school that they can afford.
Yeah.
Who's offered money? It may end up having to be a state school at home. And guess what?
Right.
If they come out of school debt-free, when Biden was talking about paying off student loans, I did this workshop at my church, and I asked parents, how many of you are still paying your students' plus loan that you took out for your children, 10, 15, 20? And the hands that went up.
So scary.
It is so frightening. And I will say this to parents. Remember when your child goes off to college, you still have to live.
Yes.
You still have to pay a mortgage. You still have to pay a car note. You still have to do all the things that you were doing before they went.
Right.
And maybe with some other children still at home.
Absolutely.
So you need to make wise decisions about where your children are going to spend those 4 years of college.
Right. And I think a lot of parents, Lenora, feel like they're not being a good parent when they make those decisions.
Absolutely.
I'm very grateful. You know, my mother couldn't afford to pay for me to go to school as a single mom, but I'm grateful though that we're like, okay, we're going to put this plan together so I could get some merit-based money. And having children very young, I know you had kids very young too. I'm just like, listen, we want y'all to go, but we have to live.
Absolutely.
Because I'm like, somebody told me you need to be focused on your retirement right now.
Absolutely.
You cannot borrow money for retirement.
Absolutely.
There are no scholarships for retirement.
We wish there were.
I know. So that's why these kids, young adults, have to really lock in and not be in fa-la-la land. Last thing that I want to say, and I know you've had this experience being at Spelman so long. It is so frustrating for me when I hear from parents, the kid is nowhere around. They're not calling. The child is not asking any questions. They're not in the room. Tell me, how do you handle parents who are trying to lead this whole process and the student who's going to benefit from this is not participating at all?
First thing I say, where is the student? I said, when you leave to go home, when you drop that child off and you go home, they need to be actively involved.
Yes.
They need to know who they need to talk to
No question.
on the college campus, where to look for the money. And they need to know that prior to even starting college. Who are my best friends?
Right.
I ask the question, where is the best place to work if you're a work-study student?
Right. Financial aid office.
I get so many answers. The best place is financial aid
No
because
question.
they know you.
Yeah.
And they're going to be looking out for you.
No question.
You know, so you're right there when things are happening and you know.
No question. I love that. So I hate it. We have to wrap.
Wow.
Oh, I know
That
the
time goes
is
so
flown
fast.
by. So just a few things that I'd like to share. So I know parents, you are like, Jini, we need more help. And so grateful that Lenora is here to help you. And we have some resources. So you can certainly go to our Thank Me Later community. That's thankmelatermoney.com, because we have a Thank Me Later scholarship organizer. You cannot do this without being organized. So certainly you want to take advantage of that. We have other amazing previous episodes with Lenora. Please take advantage of them. So even though it may have happened a year ago, 2 years ago, doesn't matter. You want to get as much information as possible. You need to be watching, but your student needs to be watching too. Get rid of that phone and everybody lock in and get focused. I would tell my kids, I will run your phone over with my car right now. Do not make me take that thing from you.
That's right.
We're about to lock in right now. And please stay in touch. So Lenora is an amazing resource. So listen, don't y'all be trying to blow her up with a whole bunch of questions. She is on LinkedIn, but I want to make sure that we're so excited. We have some amazing things that we're going to partner together to bring Lenora to you. So you'll get more information about that. So before we go, I want you to complete the sentence for me. Finish the sentence. If you blank, you will thank me later. If parents or families do what? They will thank you later.
If you start early, you will thank me later.
Okay. Well, she said that with meaning, y'all. So listen, thank you, Lenora. I appreciate you being so generous with your skills and talent and wisdom. Our families need help, particularly now. So thank you for making yourself available to them. And so for all of you, thank you for watching this episode. You know you need to share this because whether you have kids, young kids, adult kids, whatever it is, parents of kids of all ages absolutely need to hear this. So please like, subscribe, and share this. And thank you for tuning in. And we can't wait to see you on the next episode of the Thank Me Later show. See y'all later.